before we get into the business itself, talk to me about crisis communication. Why would an organization need to think and plan and strategize about communicating during a crisis?
Yeah, that's a kind of a broad question that I could answer in so many different ways, but I'll start with this. I think generally communication is overlooked, and I think it's overlooked because we move so fast, right? You kind of already alluded to that. When you're in leadership, you've got to think about the bottom line. You got to think about operations. You got to think about your product, your people, right? And more often than not, CEOs and leaders sometimes make assumptions, and it's no one's fault, right? But we're moving so quickly, we make assumptions that people know what's going on, or we have adequately communicated with them about what's going on. And often it's your internal folks, it's your employees who are kind of overlooked, right?
It's true.
If you're thinking about, if you're in a sales role and you're selling a product, you want to make sure your clients, your customers are informed and they're good, right? If you've got stakeholders like board members or shareholders, make sure they're good, keep them happy. Oftentimes we overlook our people that are on the other side of the office.
That's right.
Right? And so for me and kind of with my expertise, the more complex the situation, the better the work that I do. And it sounds a little kind of twisted, and I'm happy to tell you a little bit about my background. When crisis happens, people need clarity. They need to be able to ground themselves in leadership, because that's a trying time, right? That's an opportunity to define your leadership one way or the other, right? And so helping a leader or a business keep a clear head during crisis is the best thing you can do for them.
Wow. Yeah, because their brains are going.
And people need psychological safety during a crisis. So you think of the hurricanes.
Right.
The
hurricanes we just had here.
The hurricanes we just had. When crisis like that happens, people need direction. They need to know what to do, even if it's nothing major. But if you've got, for example, residents that are watching the news, and I mean, remember, we're talking about a Cat 5 storm. People are terrified. Floridians are evacuating. That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. The Waffle House was closed.
Okay.
Big deal.
Hello. Exactly. Right. So as meteorologists are on TV and they're saying, well, this is going to be a big one. This is catastrophic. What information are you giving people that they can take and do? Otherwise, they just kind of feel helpless, right? They're, and you freeze up. So you need that psychological safety during crisis to say, get your supplies or be prepared for a power outage, right? Like, here's some things that you need to know, and here's some things that you can do proactively to get ready for this, because it's going to happen. It's happened for the first time in their 50, 60-year history. So you've got a president who thinks to himself or herself, here are all the stakeholders I got to think about. Here's all the things I need to do. I got to make phone call. Where do I even start? That's when KPC, my business kind of swoops in to partner with that leader, so he or she can keep a clear head and come out on the other side.
And so you're giving them tactical information, not only for them and their psychology, right, their mental health even, but then you're giving them tactical information about how to talk to this person, how to communicate with that person, what to say, when to say it, stuff like that.
Yeah, I could talk communications all day long. That's kind of my bread and butter. I think words matter.
100%.
And words really matter when the stakes are high. So again, I'll give you an example of a client that I worked with. A few months ago, there's a large contractor who experienced a worksite fatality. It was the first in decades of this organization being around. And I came in and sat right alongside that CEO and talked about how do we communicate with your workforce? How do we communicate with the subcontractors who are going to be back on this job site the next day? OSHA's going to come in and do an investigation.
Yeah, that's right.
Law enforcement's here. Media might send a chopper up, right? Then you've got reporters on scene. And then what about your people who witness this? How are we making sure from a mental health perspective, and this is a contractor, mind you, so think about kind of the generally male-populated industry.
Yeah, it is. Male-dominant.
Right? So I said male-dominant the other day, and somebody told me say male-populated instead.
Fair enough.
I like that.
Communications, words matter.
Words matter. Words matter. But yeah, primarily, male-driven industry, and you've got folks that just unsuccessfully rendered CPR. So how are you taking care of those folks as well when it hits? Because even if they don't show it right now, that can come back up. And
outside of work.
chances are it's going to. Chances are it's going to. So as I kind of said, the more complex, the more difficult, that's where I do my best work. And I think that's because of the work that I did in law enforcement for many, many years.
So let's talk about that. Like, how long were you working in law enforcement, and moreover, like, how did you get into? I didn't even know this was a role. When we met, you were telling me about your law enforcement experience, and I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Of course that exists. But before you said it, it hadn't occurred to me. So, like, how did you even get into that role?
Yeah. So I had a feeling you'd ask me that question today. So I thought a little bit about it. And I want to take a couple steps back. I went to the University of South Florida, go Bulls, and got a degree in organizational communication. And I took some fun classes because I was interested broadly in criminal justice. I went to meet my advisor, and he said, if you get a couple more classes under your belt, you'll have a minor in criminology. Well, criminology is super cool, right? I remember I took a class on serial killers, which, by the way, anyone watching this is now going to think I'm crazy. But
why? That's super interesting.
Like the top 10 most infamous serial killers and the psychology behind it, and just really, really interesting stuff. So kind of for fun, I took a minor in criminology, right? That's what I did. Graduated from USF and worked in county government. That was my first job. So doing communications and community engagement at the county level, local government.
Okay. Here?
In Sarasota County. Shout out to Sarasota County government. That was my first job. Loved it. Learned about and taught Civics 101. So taught people in the community, residents, about how does your water turn on? What does it take? You know, when you're
behind the scenes
doing the dishes. Exactly. When the trash comes to pick you up, or excuse me, when someone comes to pick up the trash, you know, who does that? How does that work? And so it was really helpful for me, Chris, because I got to learn how a community functions. I was sitting in a presentation by the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office, and they started talking about communications and media relations and the importance of communicating during crises. And my mom was with me, and we took kind of the Civics 101 class for the Sheriff's Office. So they have a 10-week Citizens Academy where you can go in and learn about law enforcement.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember in the middle of the presentation, I raised my hand and I said, "Are you hiring?" Well, I guess the answer didn't resonate with me, or I wasn't listening, because the woman said no. And then apparently I raised my hand again later in the presentation and I said, "I'm sorry, did you say you're hiring or you're not hiring?" I knew, Chris, in that moment that exactly what she was doing was what I wanted to do with my career.
Yeah.
I knew it. And my mom kind of like nudged me, right? She's like, you know, Kaitlyn. And I go, yeah. And so I went on to have about an 8.5-year career at the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office. Highlight of my career.
Yeah.
So far, thank you, so far, serving as a spokesperson for the organization, but then also serving as a partner and support for our elected sheriff.
Okay.
To kind of sit around the table and brainstorm and navigate complex issues, recruitment, retention.
Oh, even that. Yeah, okay.
I was there during George Floyd in 2020. I remember I was 9 months pregnant when that happened. I gauge everything based on how pregnant I was. That's my memory. Very, very pregnant. And we had to think through, you know, even though this was happening in another part of the country, how are we going to communicate to our community that we were not Minneapolis, we're not Detroit, we're not Atlanta, we're not some of these other communities that are having real issues with law enforcement, where there's citizens calling for police reform.
Right, and protests were happening. I remember I was in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah.
My wife and I were there, and I remember seeing, you know, hundreds of people in the street, and I was like, wow, I'm surprised it's happening here. It was happening, yeah, as we learn, everywhere. Yeah, let's talk about balancing motherhood, because even when we started our reporting, I think during the first question, you got a call from your kid's school that, hey, I got to take this while I'm working. Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah. So there's, I think, and this is just my opinion, I think there's a misconception that work-life balance is achievable.
I'm starting to agree.
I think there's no such thing. And someone very, very wise once defined it as harmony. Okay. So balance is when you're like this, right? This is balance. I've got parenthood, I've got work, and I've got them both in alignment, and we're good to go. Harmony looks a little bit more like this, and maybe a little bit like this, right? And what I mean by that is you're going to have a night when you work late, right? It's you got a big project due, you got a client that needs something, and you're going to work until 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. The next day, your kid has an awards program at school at 8 a.m. You're going to take that time and you're going to go to that awards program because it matters So finding harmony between work and parenthood and all the other responsibility and fitness and your own mental health and all these things, because I don't think it's ever really going to be like this.
So, look, I don't think so either. And I used to talk about, hey, you gotta have work-life balance is good for your mental health and stuff. But even in my career, like, I think we go through seasons.
Yeah.
You go through a season where, hey, I'm really busy right now and I'm going to work 60, 70 hours. And you might go through a season where, you know what, the kid's on spring break, or it's, my wife and I's anniversary, and that's the focus.
Yeah.
You just go through different seasons. So I like harmony. That's a good word. Words matter.
Yeah. Words do matter. I'm curious from your experience too, because how old's your daughter?
13.
I think to myself, because I'm kind of in the starting stages of my business, right? My business is still young. My boys right now are 2 and 4. I think to myself, if I start my business now and put in all the work right now and really get this thing off the ground, hopefully I'll be more present for them by the time they are 10, 11, 12, or 13. Or maybe I pause right now and I'm super attentive and I just put this on the back burner so I can be with them when they're young. I don't know what the answer is, right? Like, when are my kids going to need me most?
Yeah, they need you most everything. And I think, like you said, if there's an awards tomorrow morning, that's the priority. You're going to go do those things. So I think that it's kind of a case by case. I don't think it's something where I'm going to work really hard now and I'll be there for them later. Not that you said it that way, but like, I don't think you can do that. Conversely, I don't think that you can focus on them now and wait.
Yeah.
Right? Because who knows what's going to happen with your industry in 5, 8, 10 years. Mm-hmm. Same with mine, same with any industry, right? And so you got to kind of strike on the irons hot for your business and figure out how to prioritize time with the family. And it's a juggling act. You're going to wear lots of hats. There's not an easy way to manage it. But as I know, it's based on some of your beliefs, things that are easy. And Woody Hayes, shout out Ohio State Buckeyes. Woody Hayes famously said, anything easy ain't worth a damn. I believe in this. If it were easy, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah,
totally agree. My favorite quote, I don't know if you're going to ask me this question, but I'm going to preemptively answer it. Yeah. Everything that you've ever wanted is sitting on the other side of fear.
That's right.
Right? George Adair. I love that quote. And I think something, and I shout out to my mom. She was a single mom and raised me until I was about 10 or 11 when she got married to my dad, who's the best guy in the whole wide world. She taught me fearlessness.
Yeah.
Because her story and the things that she went through and who she is just as a human, she is fearless.
Yeah.
I mean, she's like,
what an example. She's
like the best, Chris. She is incredible to me. And I think that she gave me my fearlessness, and it sounds a little self-serving or self-promoting to say I'm fearless. There are a lot of things that scare me.
Yeah, but that's different than fear.
Yeah.
Things jumping out at me scare me. Yeah. But I'm not fearful of things jumping out. Fearful makes you shell up.
I think of, being a mother now, something happening to my kids, right? That's fear for me. That's something that scares me. But in terms one step forward, what's the and I have a client, I've had a client before that he was focused so much on the outcome that was probably out of our control and well into the future. So let's get through the next 7 days. Yeah. So the next 7 days, and we get through those, we're going to look at the next 30 days. And let's break this up so it's manageable. You know what I mean? Because again, it's that overwhelming kind of psychological element to crises.
Yeah.
You have to kind of break off in little chunks. So anyhow, it sounds weird to say this, but again, the more complex, the more difficult, the better I do my work.
Okay, so when we talk about businesses preparing for a crisis, right? Because I know that you can come in and the more intricate the crisis is, the better you do, right? The more that you can offer. But is there a way for a business in any general organization to kind of preemptively take steps to prepare themselves for a crisis?
Absolutely, and I wish more would. I think there's a couple things that you can go through, whether it's kind of scenario-based training, right? Or actually writing out that plan so that when it happens, we've got a guidebook. We kind of have a playbook so we know whose responsibility is what the message is. It's already been approved. We don't have to go through a kind of bureaucratic or, extended period of time. Yeah, like, and gosh, there's nothing worse than too many cooks in the kitchen, right? When time is of the essence. So building a crisis communications plan means thinking through who are the people that need to be at the table when or if this happens. So we already know, right? So it's going to be your CEO, your CFO. You're probably going to need legal there. You might need to call your insurance producer. We might need to make sure we have some sort of, depending on what the situation is, right? So have all those roles, those kind of crisis team roles established and written down.
Okay.
Right. And then outline what is the process for communication. Are we communicating on social? Are we communicating via email? Do we need to get all of our folks in the same room? Are we a bigger organization with people all over the country? And if that's the case, how are we are we doing it via Zoom? Is a CEO recording a message? What are all those different communication methods we can think about in advance so that when it happens, it's go time and we've got a plan.
Go time right now.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, but tell me, I know that you can come in when the crisis is going on. There's a worksite fatality. You mentioned that as an example. But are you able to come in and help organizations put those strategic plans together?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And again, I think it's just kind of we all think it won't happen to us, or communication kind of gets put on the shelf. Because again, leadership is, first of all, it's lonely. Being at the top is lonely. You got a lot of things you got to think through. And communication, I think, often is kind of like a wish or a want, but it's not something that everybody has time for. So I do like to come in advance and figure out, how are you currently communicating with your people? And I can do general kind of PR as well, but really my niche is crisis. So if you're a high risk industry, I think of manufacturing, construction,
Yeah.
right? Law enforcement, of course, but there's, you can be the CEO of really anything, and you might deal with an issue related to leadership. There might be a leadership issue, might be criminal activity, embezzlement, some layoffs might have to happen because that's tough stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody wants to do that.
Or even just like, in the world we live in, like somebody says something stupid on a hot mic, and that's a crisis.
Yeah. So
Should be considered a crisis.
just to be clear, you're not going to say anything stupid, right? Because these mics are. We got Josh over here. He'll cut. Well, in social media, right? How many times have you seen like disgruntled, employees go to social media or make a comment in the local paper? Or
I spend my evenings looking at like faux pas things that people have done on social media.
There's so many case studies.
So it's so much fun to like look at.
So many.
Say dumb things and then the responses and stuff like that.
But again, I think there's a need to kind of educate folks broadly about the need for communication, and then educate about the need for crisis communications.
Yeah, I would lean more into that, because there are, when you talk about just communications, some people might also be talking about communications where they're doing PR.
Right.
Or they're doing marketing or advertising. But yours specifically for crisis, I would lean heavy into that, because that stops the scroll.
Oh, yeah.
Like when we met, I was like, wait, what is it now? Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? But then you're intrigued, like, oh yeah, of course there's a need for that.
Yeah. And I'm doing a lot of public presentations with groups as well. So I think just that exposure, not saying no to really anything unless it's a really, really bad fit. So that's the other part of this kind of solopreneur journey, being fearless. And
I'm going to give you is I did work with a very popular real estate developer 10, 11 years ago. And in some aspects, great leader. And he'd grown multiple businesses and very successful. But in some aspects, horrible leader. I was able to watch him, and he didn't know that he was mentoring me. But I was able to watch him and take good things from him and take, hey, I shouldn't do this. You can get pros and cons, good and bad, from those mentoring moments.
Yeah.
So just keep your eyes open. Thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you more than you know.
Can you hand me that? As an entrepreneur, we feel that time is your most valuable asset. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're thankful that you were willing to give us some of your time. And so we just have this little something for you, a little gift for you. Just thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Josh. This doesn't look like a little something. This is a really nice box. Should I use it for my Jordans later?
It could work. Yeah. I think it'll fit the shoebox.
Thank you. How did you know this is actually my favorite brand too?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to be like
we're a marketing agency. We do our homework.
You do. This is like my favorite. Oh my God. Oh, in Trey Williams' book. Are you kidding me?
Do you have a copy?
I do.
Okay, I wasn't sure, and so
But maybe I'll gift it. Maybe I'll gift it to somebody because, yeah. You guys are so good. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
very,
the time.
very much. Big time. Big time.